Yes, one hates to say it, but the most simplistic explanations for Trump's behavior are usually the correct ones. Trump's foreign policy, as you say, tends to be shaped more by his protean emotions, his ever-changing moods, than by any serious consideration of national interest.
Firstly, let's welcome then Geoff Kabaservice, who's the author of Conservatism and the Republican Party. What everyone needs to know. Welcome to you, Geoff. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you.
So, Geoff, welcome. When we look at President Trump, I think mercurial is good words that spring to mind, isn't it? And arguably motivated more by, I don't know, a change of mood than a change of strategy, as shown by, the rapid change in tone towards Putin, having gone from, refusing to criticize him, calling Zelensky the dictator, and now showing that sudden realization that Russia is attacking civilian hospitals and a church and calling his friendly calls meaningless. What a change.
Yes, one hates to say it, but the most simplistic explanations for Trump's behavior are usually the correct ones. Trump's foreign policy, as you say, tends to be shaped more by his protean emotions, his ever-changing moods, than by any serious consideration of national interest. And it seems that his interest in the Ukraine war and his feelings about the participants on both sides tends really to be shaped by how Zelensky and Putin interact with Trump, whether he feels they're being appropriately deferential, whether they regard him as a strong leader. And if they don't, then he'll change sides.
So really remarkable though it is to say this, when it comes to the change of mood towards Putin becoming more demanding and less tolerant, less obviously friendly, we could say it's because it could be that he is personally piqued at having his peace overtures rebuffed by Putin. So it's really more of a mood swing than a considered strategy.
Yes, I'm afraid that's correct. When Zelensky visited the White House, he was inappropriately deferential, as Trump saw it. And so Trump had him publicly embarrassed and then thrown out of the White House and then cut off Ukraine from U.S. intelligence. But now it's Putin who's making Trump look weak and small by ignoring his pleas to end the war and really by contradicting Trump's proclamations that peace is near. So this actually has led to at least a seeming change of course, with Trump saying he would allow arms shipment to Ukraine to continue, making Patriot missile batteries available to Ukraine, and he's also threatened Russia with new tariffs. But Trump also at the same time offered Putin a respite in 50 days to come to the negotiating table, so he's still a bit flip-flopping even now.
Right, but it then follows, again, truly remarkably, that there's an insight in President Trump's own story when he told an audience recently of talking to his wife after what Trump called a wonderful conversation with Vladimir, to which she replied slightly mockingly, "Oh, really? Well, another city was just hit." And that is Trump's own account. And it's obviously perfectly credible. So I guess that would speak then, it would give us more evidence of the shallowness of the president's thinking on the war.
It's not really clear how much of an influence Trump's wife is on him. And she also had pointed out to Trump that when he said that Putin had claimed he was going to stop attacks in Ukraine, he went ahead and bombed a nursing home.
Yeah.
But Trump is aware of what makes him look bad. And I think, Melania Trump also, as an Eastern European by origin, has fewer illusions than many Americans about Russia's imperial intentions. But, I think one of the ways to look at the Trump administration is it's rather like a royal court. And there's a lot of factional intrigue going on. And there's a realist faction, and there's an isolationist faction led by people like Vice President J.D. Vance and former advisor Steve Bannon. But there's also still something of an internationalist, almost Ronald Reaganite faction represented by people like Senator John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader. So all of these people contend with for Trump's affections. He's also influenced by his base, which tends to be largely anti-Ukrainian as well. So all of these things contribute as well as Trump's own mood shifts.
It is a fascinating analysis, a fascinating insight. Thank you so much for joining us, Geoff Kabaservice. So let's now look at the corresponding, the other side of the coin. Andrei Soldatov is a Russian veteran journalist and an expert on its security services, here to discuss Vladimir Putin. Welcome to you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So look, we're discussing there how President Trump's motivation are certainly changeable, certainly unpredictable, arguably shallow. There's such a contrast with Vladimir Putin, isn't there? The Russian leader's motivations are in some ways the opposite. He's got a grand long-term vision of restoring Russia's past greatness, with himself as Russia's savior.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the Kremlin's narrative. This is a message the Kremlin is trying to send to the outside world that the Russian position has been always very consistent. That is why, actually, as a Russian team in these talks is led by exactly the same guy who was there in 2022. So the idea is to say, well, we were always ready for peace talks. We always had the same demands. It is Ukraine which is acting irrationally, which always trying to quit the talks, and we are the rational side. Unfortunately, this kind of message will find some response not only domestically, but also outside of the country.
Yes, I mean, it is then in Putin's eyes his own historic mission, and as part of that mission, Andrei, regaining dominion of Ukraine is vital then to his vision of a Russia safe in its borders, surrounded by puppet states or those which pose no threat to Russia.
Yes, and also we need to understand that for him, this is a war not only with Ukraine, but this is a war with the West, and he's not losing. Well, he's not winning, obviously, but his army is making some advances on the Ukrainian territory. His spies and intelligence agencies are extremely active in Europe, and still we see the lack of appropriate response to these sabotage attacks and assassination attempts. So from his point of view, well, he is in a difficult spot, but it's not desperate.
And look, I mean, the recent accord, if we can call it that, with President Trump, would he then see that, as has been discussed, as ultimately expendable for the sake of the greater goal of Russian greatness? Despite its ups and downs, he would, if necessary, simply regard that as expendable and carry on with the mission.
Well, I think for Putin, it's important to try at least to win back some sort of cooperation from Trump. We need to understand that, yes, on the battlefield, the Russian army is not losing, but the mood in Moscow is not very good. People are really depressed. They feel very tired of the war, even if they cannot admit that. Also, the climate of repression and combination with economic sanctions, again, contribute to this feeling of depression. And Putin needs to address that. His way to do that is to say, look, again, we are ready for talks. But everyone understands that these talks are not for real.
Now, tell me, I mean, it's impossible in one way to know this, but I'm interested in your view and your judgment. How do you believe President Putin truly regards President Trump as a leader, as a man, as a human being?
Well, I think that, first of all, Putin also believes in the idea of strongman. That is why he's so obsessed with the history of the Second World War, of the idea that three strongmen, Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt, could back then decide and solve all the problems in the world. And he very much wants to get back to this scheme, and for that he needs another strong man. And that is why he has this big, I would say, he doesn't really respect European leaders, but he has some respect for Trump. And yet he has this dark vision that there is a deep state in the United States. Lots of people in Moscow believe in his idea. And he believes that, look, maybe he could win 2 years until the midterm elections, but not much more than these 2 years. So his ambitions are quite limited.
Okay, and just lastly, we frequently discuss President Trump and his attachment to wealth and in enriching himself, quite simply. It's also true that Vladimir Putin is attached to riches, isn't it? And he is, it is said, one of the richest men in the world already, despite that, strikingly modest salary which he draws as president.
I think it reflects his sense of insecurity, which he got when, as a young officer of the KGB, he witnessed how the Soviet Union and his beloved KGB, collapsed in 1991. That is why he wanted to find a way how to find some sort of guarantees for his family and himself. And now, unfortunately, his insecurity, felt by people of Ukraine and also of Russia, because now it's also about not only about money, but it's about Russian borders, ambitions, geopolitical games, and all of that.
Okay, Andrei Soldatov, really, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let us get a voice from Ukraine.